Hello, everyone. This is Josh. It's just past 1, so with any luck, this is coming through and you guys can hear me. And I always like to start off, well, I really want to start off and just get right into the seminar or webinar, but I've been late to webinars, so I think it's always best to talk for a little bit and let people get in when they can. I hope that people can hear me. I've had problems with the software before, but I'm really excited about doing this webinar. So I'll just give a little bit more time. Actually, if people can everyone hear me? If anyone can write back and just say, yeah, we can hear you, that'd be great. I hope that's the case. Anyway, so this is Joshua Spodek's Fundamentals of Hustling webinar series. It's how to make meaningful connections, even with people you just met. And just giving a little bit of time, I guess I'll say what I often say at the beginning of these, which is that if you have ideas for or questions about leadership or entrepreneurship or hustling that you would like me to do a webinar on, I'm happy to do that. I've done a couple already that were based on suggestions from readers and attendees. Okay, great. Thank you, Catherine, for saying that you can hear. That's good. Gives me confidence in the software and the connection. So yeah, like I said, if there are people who have questions or topics they'd like me to cover, I'll be happy to cover them in future webinars. This one is one, this is actually, I'm going to mention this in the webinar, but this, how to make meaningful connections, is one of my favorite in-person seminars to give. And so I wanted to do this first. The thing about it is that it takes multiple people. Like when I do it in person, I have people in the room pair up with each other and practice it with each other. And here online, we can't do that. So I'm just going to get to do the, tell you about how to do it. You'll have to do it on your own. But I've really wanted to do this. I think it's too valuable a skill and too fun something to practice not to do it, even if we can't do it live in person. But I'm really excited about it. I'm really enthusiastic about it. So I'll just give maybe a couple more minutes for people to connect if they need to. And let's see, there's a few people signed up, or people here. And all right, I think I'll get started. When people come on, then I think they will they'll be able to pick up. So I wanted to start with, all right, it's the Fundamentals of Hustling webinar series. So I want to point out this Fundamentals of Hustling. Why do I say hustling? I teach classes in leadership, and I teach classes in entrepreneurship, and I teach classes in sales. And in all these classes, never exactly, they're always a bit different than I think what people really want. Hustling to me is a little bit of each of those things, and it's the ability to make things happen. And I think one of the first things to be able to make things happen, sometimes you feel like creating your own luck. And one of the first things to enable that is to be able to make connections meaningfully with people. And so, I wanted to give a little bit of the big picture of why we make connections. So it's not just that we want to make meaningful connections for the sake of connections, but there's more to it. And there's an example that I like. One of my favorite examples, if you hear me talk about entrepreneurship and leadership enough, you'll hear me talk about Richard Branson and how he got started. So a lot of people know his story, but not everyone. Well, first, for people who don't know, I checked yesterday. According to Wikipedia, he's worth $5.2 billion and didn't start off with a whole lot, certainly not that much. And it's not like he had huge advantages. He's also dyslexic. And what he was able to do, I want to give the story of how he started, or one of the origins of Virgin Airways. And if people don't know this story, it's really quite impressive. So this is a story I found, this is a telling that I found on the web of someone of Richard describing it to them. So it said in 1979, when Joan, which is his fiancée, and he were on a holiday in the British Virgin Islands, there's the Virgin from Virgin Airlines, we were trying to catch a flight to Puerto Rico, but the local Puerto Rican scheduled flight was canceled. The airport terminal was full of stranded passengers. I made a few calls to charter companies and agreed to charter a plane for $2,000 to Puerto Rico. Cheekily leaving out his and her name, I divided the price by the remaining number of passengers, borrowed a blackboard, and wrote Virgin Airways, $39 for a single flight to Puerto Rico. I walked around the airport terminal and soon filled every seat on the charter plane. As we landed in Puerto Rico, a passenger turned to me and said, Virgin Airways, not too bad. You could be in business. So from a canceled flight, he was able to turn around and get a free flight, plus help all these other people. I call that hustling. And it's not rare among self-made successful people to be able to go from a situation which was a negative, being stranded, and turn it into a positive, which is getting a chartered flight, having everything paid for, and have people impressed by it. And I want to point out what he did not have in making this happen. He did not have any capital. There was no money. He didn't get investment. He didn't even have time to do anything. He didn't have what you know. There wasn't anything here that he did anything special. Anyone can do, he didn't have special access to any chartered airline or anything like that. He called around like anybody else could have. And for that matter, there was no whom you know either. We often say it's not what you know, it's whom you know. Well, there was no whom you know there for him either. What happened, and I'm not saying this is the only thing, but if you're going to get people to jump on a flight and be able to get people to give you an airplane for a flight, you have to make fast, meaningful connections, not just going up and asking people, would you do this? But you have to get them comfortable spending money on you and accepting that you're going to take this flight. So with regard to this idea that it's not what you know, it's whom you know, secret number one I want to point out about getting things done is that it's neither what you know nor whom you know. I disagree with both of those things as being the most fundamental thing. To me, it's do you have the skills to create whom you know? Because if you can create relationships, then you can get all the whom you know that you want, and then you're able to do things. So I wanted to give you the big picture, that connections are not just about meeting and networking. I put just in quotes because obviously meeting and networking are valuable. That's how you find jobs. That's how you get promoted. That's how you make things happen, not just professionally, but that's what our lives are about in large part, is our relationships with others. But there's much more to it than that. If you're able to make things like that happen, it's about creating your life as you want to live it based on your values. I think Richard is doing that. Increasingly, I feel like the people that I work with are doing that. And it's not just making things happen for you, but it's while helping others. If you look at that, the people he chartered the flight from are happy. The people who got on the flight are happy. He's happy. Everybody's happy. It worked out that doing things in everybody's interests. Schools don't teach people how to hustle. I went to business school and I learned a lot of stuff about the importance of networking and the importance of meeting people, but not exactly how to do it. So I do teach that. They teach principles. I learned a lot through lecture, case study, what was important to do, but not exactly how to do it. So the meaningful connection exercise, what we're going to cover it about a third of the way through this. Then I'm going to talk about what the exercise is and how to do it. And people who only want to do the meaningful connection exercise can leave and do the exercise themselves. Or if they like, you can listen through to the end, and I'm going to talk a lot more about not just the meaningful connection exercise, but the whole course around it, where that's just the tip of the iceberg. So the meaningful connection exercise is fundamental to be able to create meaningful connections with people in order to make things happen in the style of Richard Branson. Now, of course, it's not everything. There's a lot more you have to have to it. You have to know how to do lots of different things to be a leader, to be an entrepreneur, but meaningful connections is a fundamental part. Now, I think that doing exercises in general is more fundamental for learning leadership, entrepreneurship, hustling. You can't learn, there's only so much that you can learn from books and from lecture, and you just can't get experience. So I'm going to tell you a story about, this is me after business school, but before really working on being able to make meaningful connections and leadership and things like that. So this is the story of when I embarrassed myself with this author that I admired. So this is a couple years out of business school. I found out that there was a panel of authors speaking at a university near me, and one of the authors had written a book that I really loved and made a big impression on me and I found very valuable. And I thought, I'm going to go meet this guy. So I go there with a friend, we watch the panel of authors and they talk about whatever they talk about. And at the end, there's a meet and greet. And so the authors come down off the stage and I go up and talk to the guy. Well, here's the thing. I knew that I wanted to make a connection with him, but I didn't yet know how to make a meaningful connection. So I walk up to him and I say, I read your book. It made a big impression on me. I just wanted to thank you because it was a really important book for me. Reasonable thing to say. So he looks at me and he goes, well, thank you. So I knew from school to make this connection. Before school, I might not have even gone up to him at all or even thought to do it, but I didn't know what to do. And I don't know if this happens to you when you get really nervous, but like my tongue was tied and all I could think was say something, but I didn't know what to say. So for what was probably about 15, 20, maybe 30 seconds, but what felt like a year, I just stood there and looked at the guy, and he looked at me, and I didn't know what to say, and he was waiting for me to say something. And so after a little while of me not being able to say anything, I just went, well, great to meet you. And he said, great to meet you. And then I walked away. And my friend who watched this just started laughing and laughing and laughing. I was like, why are you laughing? This is embarrassing. She goes, that was the funniest thing I've ever seen. That was two geeks who didn't know what to say or do, just staring at each other, not knowing what to say or do. So that was after business school. After, in principle, I learned to handle situations like that. But I didn't know how, because I knew what to do, but not how to do it. Okay, so a little bit about myself. Some people on here know stuff about me. If you don't know that much, there's my bio on my webpage. But I'll say some things that if you saw my CV, you'd see that I got my PhD in physics. There I am getting it. And I helped build a satellite that's observing X-rays coming from all over the galaxy and universe. And but partway through getting my PhD, I had an idea for a business. And I went off and started a business and went into entrepreneurship and left academia. And as you can see, the Wall Street Journal, we got lots of press, we got lots of really good coverage. But also, if you look at our launch, it was just before the bubble burst in getting funding, and 9/11 happened, and a recession hit. And physics is great for a lot of things, but I didn't really know how to run a business to make meaningful connections, for example. And so, but I knew I wanted to, so I got squeezed out of the company I founded and knew I wanted to start more companies. So I went back to get an MBA, looking suspiciously like I did when I got my PhD, just the one picture. Along the way, I kept getting more and more press. Esquire magazine, for example, called me best and brightest in their annual Genius issue, and I got lots of cool stuff like that. But the leadership stuff that I started to learn about in business school really caught on, and that became what I really wanted to do. So I started a couple other companies along the way, but really got into teaching and coaching leadership, becoming an executive coach and a personal coach. So you see right now I'm an adjunct at NYU, and on different semesters, I also lecture and coach at Columbia Business School, my alma mater. You probably found me through my blog, but if you didn't, then you know that if you didn't, then you might not know that I keep a blog, and there I am swimming across the Hudson River. I post there every single day. And very recently, Inc. magazine, or Inc.com picked me up, so I'm a columnist there, writing my column, The Fundamentals of Hustling. And so that's a little bit about me. So now you remember I just told that story about me embarrassing myself with the author, knowing what to do, but not how to do it. So now I want to tell you a story from last summer when I had a much more successful example. And this is where I explicitly used the meaningful connection exercise. So I want to give you an example of it in practice. So last summer, I was at the book release of my mentor's book, my mentor, Marshall Goldsmith, and he had a book release party in New York City. And I went there, and there was, in attendance was a woman, Frances Hesselbein. I'm not sure if you know who she is, but my mentor, Marshall, calls her the best leader he's ever come across. And so she is his mentor. She's also about 99 years old. She was the CEO of the Girl Scouts and worked with Peter Drucker and among other things. Okay, she's the Presidential Medal of Freedom honoree. And so I talked to her, and I mentioned that she had tweeted one of my tweets, or retweeted one of my tweets a few months before, and I was wondering how she knew about me. And so I talked to her a little bit, and she said, come to my office for coffee sometime. So you don't have to ask me twice. I'm definitely going to go to meet her. And so as I'm preparing to go, now a little while later, it takes a while to set up this meeting. I'm preparing to go, and I'm thinking to myself, well, of course I'm going to go meet with her, but what am I going to talk to her about? I don't really know what to say. And I was thinking, like the first thing that came to mind, she's 99 years old, is like to ask her, what was it like growing up in the aftermath of World War I? But I knew that wasn't the right question to ask. That wouldn't be effective. And I'm trying to think of what to say. And then it hits me, of course, like I teach this stuff. This is a perfect example to do meaningful connection. When I meet with her, I'll do meaningful connection. So I go to her office building. It's on Park Avenue. And, the guard downstairs says, she's very important. The other day, General Shinseki was waiting for her. Like these she works a lot with with West Point. And he's like 4-star generals wait for her. So I'm like, oh, wow, this is really intimidating. So I go up to her office, and her assistant shows me in and sits me down on the couch. Now, I got to tell you, walking into Frances Hesselbein's office is an experience, because all up around the outside of the office on the top wall are these books that she's written, and they're translated to every language you can think of. So there's tons of these books. Then you look around, and the next thing I see are swords and gifts and things that are gifts from the heads of states and pictures of her with heads of states, people with amazing military uniforms and tons of medals and things like that. And then, of course, you see the pictures of her with like 4 or 5 different presidents. And this is quite an experience to walk into an office like this. It's not a particularly big office, but when you see all these swords and languages and presidents and stuff, it's like, whoa, this is quite an experience. So the assistant sits me down on the couch and puts the chair that Frances is going to sit on right there, like, so that when Frances sits down, her face is like a couple feet from mine. And she's a very friendly woman, but she turns to me, looks me right in the eye and says, "So what do you want to talk about?" So I'm really on the spot. This is really nerve-wracking because presidents, how can I compete with that? And then I'm thinking, of course, I have my technique. I'm going to do meaningful connection with her. And we'll go through the exercise later to say exactly what I said and did, but I came out and we talked about what's a passion of hers, and then we talked about different people, and you'll hear the exercise in a second. And I can tell you that we immediately started talking and having a great chat. The original scheduled meeting was for a half-hour coffee. A little over 2 hours later, her assistant came in and said, "Frances, your next appointment is here. It's time, we really have to move on to the next appointment." And Frances said to me, "Josh, this is one of the most I can't remember a more delightful conversation." So I felt really great about that. And in the process, she invited me to West Point with her and put me in touch with some people at her level for me to continue some of the work that I'm doing. So that's the difference between, really, I just used meaningful connection, and that started things off, and then we continued and flowed from there. That's the difference between being tongue-tied and not knowing what to say to an author I liked, but not at the level of Frances Hesselbein, being able to get things going with someone who won the Presidential Medal of Freedom. And increasingly, people of that stature in my life. Last year I took my class to see a guest appearance with the CEO of Deloitte, who had 250,000 people reporting to him. And I was able to hit it off with him sometime before and to get this thing to work out. And it was really quite an experience to have my class come to the global headquarters of Deloitte in Rockefeller Center. And it's not just me, it's also my students. I'm able to teach this stuff. And I hope that it's also something that comes across with you who are attending here today. So my students, for example, one of my students last semester got an internship. In fact, she hustled. She connected with another guest speaker in my class. And to give you an idea of the stature, I'm not going to name him by name, but she got an internship with him. And not long after she started working with him, she tells me that she got invited to a Victoria's Secret runway show because the guy's in fashion and branding. And to me, that's like the pinnacle. It's like pretty tough to get into one of those things. And she was the scared student at the beginning of the semester when I told her, this is going to be an experiential class. You're going to be doing exercises like meaningful connection. She was like, "Josh, I don't know what to do. I'm really scared to do stuff like this. I don't know how to do stuff like that." I said, "I'm going to walk you through step by step. And we're not going to jump in the deep end at first. We're going to go step by step and do some simple things and then move up to the more challenging things." Then there was another student of mine last semester who he was very dedicated. He did the exercises, including meaningful connection, very thoughtfully and thoroughly. And so that was over the semester. Then winter break came, and after he came back, he told me that he went home, and his family business is it's a retail store. And he went back and was working at the family business, at the store, selling stuff. And he said that he started outselling the professional salespeople who've been working there for years. And he has never taken a sales class. He said, "Josh, all I was doing was stuff from your class, the exercises you gave us. I was just doing that with the customers who came in, and I was able to sell more successfully than the salespeople." So this is the sort of thing that comes from doing these exercises. Now, if you only practice meaningful connection, just the exercise that we work on today, you will get far. You'll create more meaningful relationships. And when I say more meaningful, I mean relationships that have more meaning in them, and also meaningful relationships, you'll have more of them. People will open up more with you because you'll enable them, you'll make them feel more comfortable exposing their vulnerabilities and sharing things with you. You will also open up back to them as well. It's going to become a two-way thing. You'll feel more comfortable. And if you have teams where people share things more openly and more closely, and they're guarded less, well, that's the recipe for teams working together and being more effective as teams. Another thing, the most common question I hear when people meet each other is, "So what do you do?" And I predict that you are going to find that this question is inane and insufferable. You'll still answer when people ask it of you, but less and less are you going to ask it. And more when people ask it of you, you're going to start changing topics to other things. And the same thing with traffic, weather, and other impersonal protection. Why do I use the word protection? By protection, I mean, when you meet someone, you want to find out about them, but most of us are pretty guarded. We want to protect our vulnerabilities before we share about ourselves. So we often protect our vulnerabilities by not sharing that much about ourselves. That's why we talk about weather, traffic, things like that. We don't really care about the accident on I-95, but we do it to protect ourselves. Meaningful connection gets past that. So I'm going to give you a script. The embodiment of meaningful connection is a script. And you don't have to write it down. I'm going to give you, when you get the replay for this webinar, you'll get an email a couple hours after this webinar, and I'll have a link to the to where you can get the script, because it's on my blog. I wrote a post about it a while ago. So you don't have to memorize the script. Now, some people think, wait a minute, script, isn't that kind of fake? Well, first of all, so what do you do for a living is also a script. It's also someone, you didn't make that up. But I want to point out that consider actors or musicians or athletes. Actors have scripts and they follow them. And the thing about scripts is that the more that you practice them, the more authentic and genuine your voice becomes. At the beginning, when you first learn a script, you're just saying the words on the page. But when an actor learns them better and better and better, at a certain point, you can take the words for granted and you can express yourself through the script. Same with musicians. Generally they don't write they're playing music that was written by someone else, or even if they wrote it a long time ago. But the more that they play it, the more that they can express themselves through the music. Same with athletes who run plays and so forth. Rehearsal leads to more authenticity and more self-expression than you can get if you're trying to wing things all the time. So again, what I'm trying to impress here upon you is there's a script, and that's the beginning point, but you have to practice it and practice it. The more you practice it, the first maybe 3, 4, 5 times, you're still kind of getting the hang of it. After that, then it starts becoming more natural. And by the time you've done it about 10 times, you're able to take the words for granted and express yourself and really meaningfully connect with somebody. And like I said before, I want to do this webinar first. This is my 4th webinar, so I want to do this one first. And the reason is that you need these partners to practice it. You can't meaningfully. I haven't figured out a way to do it over the internet. So I'm going to give you the script, but you have to go and practice it with others. But it's just too valuable an exercise for me not to do a webinar on it at all. So when I do these seminars, it's great in person. I get rooms full of people to all stand up, talk to the neighbor next to you, and they do it one way and they do it the other way, and they really love it. Here, you're going to have to practice it yourself later. You'll get the script later, and you don't have to tell people, by the way, hey, I'm doing this new exercise. Do you mind if I practice it with you? You can just do it without telling them, and it can be with people you've known for a long time. You can do it with people you're just meeting. You can do it all the time. I use it all the time. Like I said, I'll put a link in the script on the webinar replay page. Oh, sorry, I said it was going to be an email. It's going to be on the replay page. The more that you practice it, the more that you'll do it, and you will learn and grow in ways that no reading, lecture, or case study could give. It's by doing this, by practicing it, by seeing what happens when you do this exercise to the other person. How do they behave differently? My students consistently report that others open up to them in ways that they didn't expect and weren't used to, but really enjoyed. And then they find themselves able to open up as well. And that's something you don't get by reading a book and saying, maybe I'll do that later. That's why my first webinar was on what books can't teach, because I wanted to establish that I'm teaching stuff and trying to get across here things that you don't get in books. Like learning piano or playing basketball. I can't imagine someone trying to tell someone to learn to play the piano just by reading about it, just by listening to lectures about it. You got to put your hands on the keyboard, you got to put your hands on the ball. And in the case of leadership, in the case of meeting people, you got to go out there and talk to people. You need experience. And we'll develop skills. This experience will give you the skills like the students I had who hustled internships to Victoria's Secret and outselling professional salespeople. You'll be able to do it in your professional life. You'll also be able to do it in your personal life. I did this. I remember one of my clients, he was preparing to meet with his boss to do this, and he decided to practice it with his wife first. He told her what the exercise was, told her exactly what he was going to do. And he said within the first couple questions, she stopped acting like she was helping him with an exercise and started really meaningfully connecting with him in ways he hadn't seen before. And they've been married for 9 years. Okay, so meaningful connection is still to the tip of the iceberg. I'll talk more about the context of the full course that it's a part of afterward. All right. Oh, and one last thing before doing the script is there's this Warren Buffett quote. A client of mine's friend got to have lunch with him. And you'll see in a second why I mentioned this quote about Warren Buffett. It's by my client's friend. She said, throughout the conversation, Buffett stressed the significance of passion, how necessary it was for his own journey, and how imperative it is for us to find ours. Passion was the fire behind his focus that encouraged him to absorb all things business all the time. It was a job. It was his life. The point here is that she was talking with someone. I hope we can agree on Warren Buffett being a successful businessman and someone who we probably wouldn't mind emulating in business. Okay, I'll come back to that in a second. Now here I'm going to give you the Meaningful Connections script. I put script in quotes because it's not a script where I tell you exactly every word that you have to say. Some of the things you have to listen very carefully to what the other person is saying. It forces you to listen and process very quickly. So you have to fill in some of the blanks with things that come out from your life and the person you're listening to or talking to. So I say script because it is as easy as learning a script, but in the moment you have to think very quickly. Okay, so this exercise makes people feel understood, meaningfully connected, and they'll often talk a lot. In fact, I recommend when you practice it, well, I was about to say, I'd love to hear back how people experience it, but we'll get to that later. So the first thing is ask them their passion. Now, it's really you're asking them something that they really care about, something they like. And one of the most common questions I get when I say this is, wait, do I ask? Well, I like to say, what's your passion? Word for word. So what's your passion? Some people say, wait, can I say the word passion in a professional context? Can I say that with business people? That's why I put the Warren Buffett quote up there. Because if Warren Buffett can talk about passion in his world, then I think it's acceptable for us to talk about it. And some people say, well, he's very successful. He can talk about it. Yeah, it's not that he's successful so he can talk about it. I think he talks about passion. That's what made him successful. Nonetheless, if you just want to say to someone, what's something that you really like to do, something that you spend more time doing than you have to, something that you take time out from other things to do, you can say that too, but I highly recommend what's your passion. Now, I say besides work and family, not that work and family aren't passions for people, but oftentimes those are topics that they've talked about so many times that you often don't get the most interesting conversations. Also, with some things like family, they tend to be so personal that sometimes they won't share the really passionate parts of those things. Okay, so I recommend starting off. And you can say this almost the first words. Like if someone I've just met, I come up and I say, hi, I'm Josh, good to meet you. How are you? They say, hi, I'm fine. And I say, yeah, if you don't mind my asking, what's a passion of yours? So they're going to reply with still something usually fairly usual. Oftentimes it's like they like to go to restaurants, they like to cook, or they're like a movie aficionado, or they play an instrument, things like that. And they'll give usually a pretty short answer. Now, the next thing you do, you have to think on your feet very quickly, is you say, cool, I know, and now you have to think of someone in your life, it could be yourself, and you say, cool, I know my friend Jim, who, now let's say they said they like to travel. So you say, I know my friend Jim, he travels, and now you give the reason why he travels. So maybe he likes adventure. You also have to think of someone else. So maybe you have a friend named Mary, and Mary likes to travel, but for her reason to travel is because she likes to sample world cuisine. So you would say, cool, I know a friend of mine, Jim, he loves to travel, and for him it's a big adventure. He loves to go and do things that get his adrenaline rush and things like that. But I have another friend, Mary, and she travels, but it's totally different. For her, she really likes to sample all the foods of the world and come back and cook the things that she learned how to make. What's your reason? Why do you travel? So the picture here is cool. I know someone who travels for their motivation, and I know someone else who travels for their motivation. Why do you travel? And you have to fill in for the blanks for yourself. Now, they're going to respond to you almost always in significantly more depth than they did their first answer. The first answer is usually a quick one. The next one is they're going to start describing a lot more of why they travel. Because what happens inside their head, when you ask them what their passion is, they start thinking about it. It's in their heads. They want to share it. But they don't want to share it with just anyone. They want to know that you really care. And when they hear that you connected with not just one, but two people in your life, you're not judging them, you're not evaluating them, you're just listening to them and connecting it with something in your life, and therefore demonstrating through behavior some acceptance. And I can tell you, I've had people do meaningful connection with me many times, and I can tell you when they say that they know one person, they do it for one reason, another person does it for another reason. In my head, I'm always thinking, no, that's not the reason. No, that's not the reason either. But if that's what you think about me, now I got to set this straight. Here's all about me. And so the person will tell you significantly more. Now, when they talk, they're going to have usually one, sometimes two, rarely three, but sometimes three words that are unusual words that they put a lot of stress on, or that are very emotional words, or words that don't belong there. Like they'll say, I travel because traveling to me is like, it's like a symphony of the world that I get to sample. And I love the people. Okay, so in that, the word symphony just doesn't fit. I understand what they might mean by the word symphony, but it's something that you wouldn't expect someone to talk about related to travel. So the challenge in step 4 is while they're talking, you have to listen to what they're saying, understand what they're saying, and pick out these 2 or 3 words. So in that, symphony would be one, and I love meeting people. So love is a very emotional word. So when you, in step 5, respond to what they say, usually all I do is ask for a clarification, but using those 2 or 3 words. See, when people talk, they put a lot of the meaning into those words, and those words, when you say them back to them, will carry all that meaning in them. So if you do what I used to do, I would try to take what they said and I try to put it into my language. And I thought that by putting it into my language, that would demonstrate that I listened and processed what they said. But you know what? It doesn't work that way. If they say it's like a symphony of the world, and I said, oh, so it's like music for you, they're going to feel, no, that's not it. I didn't say music. It's a symphony, because you didn't get that. If you don't get that one word, that word carries the meaning for them. If you respond to them, oh, so it's a symphony. That's very interesting. Can you clarify what you mean by symphony? They will hear that and they will think, oh, this person understood me. This person got the meaning in what I was trying to say. And they will give you a long answer. And they'll talk a lot more about it. Sometimes they'll talk at length. So I want to give I'm going to go through it really quickly. I'm going to go through it again after talking about it. So it's ask their passion. I like to say, so what's your passion? If you don't mind my asking, besides work and family. They'll say something, maybe it's food, they like to cook. You say, cool, I know my mom loves to cook. She likes to cook because it brings people together. And, I like to cook because I'm into fitness and eating very healthy. So I know I like to cook so I can get what my thing is. Their response will usually include 2 or 3 words that are unusual or stressed. You listen to what they say, but listen for those words and then respond for clarification using them, and they will talk at length. They'll really enjoy talking and sharing these things with you. And that will create a meaningful connection. All right. So the word passion, like I mentioned, a lot of people feel uncomfortable using the word passion. I say to you, if you're uncomfortable using the word passion and you want passion in your life, how much passion are you going to get if you can't even say the word? But in all fairness, when someone first suggested to me to ask people, so what's your passion? I felt uncomfortable too. It took me a while to get used to it, but now it's totally normal. And I should also point out that people who ask me, what's your passion? Or ask me, is it okay to say the word passion to someone in business and in context like that? They only say it before the exercise. After the exercise, they don't ask that. Because when you do it, you realize it's not that crazy a question to ask, and people get more comfortable asking it. So I recommend practicing it the first 5 times with people you know well, that you're not going to feel weird trying something out. You might feel a little weird if it's new to you, but I predict it'll get pretty normal feeling, and things like, so what do you do for a living, are going to start feeling really fake and not genuine. All right, another thing, a lot of times when I do this in person in seminars, a lot of people, they'll say, so what do what's a passion of yours? And they'll say, oh, I like to travel. And they'll say, oh, really, why? Okay, nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying don't ask why. But if you've ever been on the receiving end of a little child saying, why, you know that it's very easy to ask, and it's not so easy to answer, and you're kind of asking the other person to do all the work. When you ask someone what's a passion of yours, you're asking them to reveal something that motivates them, something that you could, things that we care about are things that we can be hurt by. You don't get hurt by things that are, you're not vulnerable to things you don't care about. If someone, I don't know about you, but, when I was a kid in school, sometimes other kids would laugh at me. If it was something I didn't care about, I would laugh at that thing too. I would just say, that's not me, that's that thing. But if it was something really personal I couldn't get rid of, that's a vulnerability I can't get rid of. And so we learn not to share these things. And when people ask us about things we care about, That's a vulnerability. It's kind of putting us out on a limb. When you ask someone why, without sharing anything about yourself, without connecting what they say to you in any way, you ask them to go out farther on the limb. There's only so far someone's going to go out on a limb for you without you either pulling them back in or going out on a limb with them. Now, when you connect something of them to your life, that brings them back in. It takes them back off that limb. Now, it may happen that you ask why, and they'll give you a good answer, or an answer that you like, and you can get the conversation going. I'm not saying you can't have great conversations that way, even meaningful ones. But this is an exercise to teach a certain skill. So if you ask why, fine, go for it. But keep in mind, it's not necessarily going to create a meaningful connection. It often feels like they're being interviewed. Yeah, so I talked about vulnerability. When you ask someone to be vulnerable, they're opening themselves up to being hurt, to being manipulated, things like that. We've all been hurt and manipulated, so we don't like to share these things. But when you do, through your behavior, allow them to be vulnerable, and then you yourself share your vulnerability, it creates intimacy. And even in a professional context, it's intimacy. So, and like I said before, when you have intimacy in your teams, then you can create teams that function much more effectively, and your relationships among your team members are going to be much more close and more meaningful and more rewarding. So why two people? When you say, I know one person who does it for this reason, I know one person who does it for that reason, what's yours? I found that if I just say, oh, I know someone who does that, do you do it for the same reason? They usually just say no, and that's it. And if you do three, then it ends up being talking too much. So two seems to be just the right amount, where it gets the person feeling like, no, it's not that, it's not that. No, let me tell you, it's this. It also forces you to listen and to put their interests first. A lot of people say, if you want to get people talking, just get them talking about themselves. Well, you're not necessarily going to get the most interesting thing, but if you get their passion out there and put their interest before yours, keep your interests, don't go hungry. But in terms of this conversation, you're putting their interest first. People really respond to that. And they'll feel meaning, and you'll feel meaning in return. So why their motivations? A lot of people, they mistakenly say, oh, I know someone who likes to travel. He goes to Paris and London and all this stuff. That's describing their behavior, their actions. This exercise is you say to them, they do it for this reason. So you have to get a sense for what the people's reasons are for doing things. Why motivations? Because motivations connect to emotions, and emotions are where that's where our meaning lies. So it's to get people talking about their emotions, their motivations, and that's gets them talking about meaning. Some people wonder, wait, what if I'm asking them to talk about their stuff, what if they talk about something I don't care about? And I can tell you I've done this with dozens, maybe by now 100 or so people. And while there have been people who've talked about stuff that I didn't care about, even when it's stuff I don't care about, their passion makes it interesting to me. So I've never had a case where I was like, oh, I regretted bringing up this conversation. Actually, having done it enough times, I'm used to, I've done enough times that I expect that I'm going to find something interesting. So I look forward to asking this question because I find out such rich, interesting things about people. So like I say, the first couple times you do it, you're going to be trying to remember the words. You're going to have a little bit of trouble thinking of two people on the fly or being able to listen to people and picking out those words. So I recommend practicing it like you'd practice piano scales, and also not just practicing it many times. Like I said, the first 5 takes a little practice. By 10, you're getting pretty good at it. By 15, you're going to be unconsciously competent at it, and you're going to do it automatically. But I also recommend not going off script. If a piano teacher tells you to play scales, do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, and you start playing do, fa, mi, re, it doesn't work. You have to play it the right way. That's how you learn what the scale is for or how it works. There's a lot of theory underlying this. And by playing the scales, you learn the theory. And by doing the exercise, you learn the theory underneath it. Ultimately, when you practice it, what you develop is compassion. Compassion is a capacity to feel for others, to be able to act on that. And that's what happens when you do this exercise enough. You start to develop compassion. You might not see it yet, that this exercise would develop compassion, but that's what happens. This exercise develops compassion. And if you practice, you'll get benefits. If you don't practice it, you won't. So I know this is a webinar, it's kind of passive. I can't get you guys interacting with each other like I do when it's in person, but if you practice, you'll get the benefits. If not, you won't. So again, here's the script. Ask them their passion, what they like to do besides work and family. They're going to respond with something usual. You say, cool. I know my friend Bob, who does that thing for this reason. I know my friend Sarah, she does it for this reason. What's your reason? They're going to give you a response. They're going to have a couple words in there that carry the meaning, that they stress or they gesticulate or they say repeat several times or it doesn't fit into that context. And you respond by asking for clarification using those words. That is a meaningful connection exercise, and I recommend you guys give it a shot. And that so far was the tip of the iceberg. I think if you only do meaningful connection exercise, you will get far. You'll be able to create more meaning and value in the relationships. You'll learn more about yourself. But like I said, that's the beginning of one part of this course that I teach. And so if all you want is meaningful connection, I have no problem for me if you take off now and you go off and start practicing it. But for people who are interested in learning the context of of how it fits into a full leadership course, then that's what I'm going to talk about for now. And let's see, I'm trying to think if I should take questions. I'm going to keep going, but if people have questions, post them up, and I'll try to get to them. So what comes next after meaningful connection? That is what happens when you're in a relationship with someone and you've developed some compassion with them. So meaningful connection is part of a course on leadership. The next exercise after meaningful connection is how to make people feel understood. So if you ever had someone ask you to do something and you don't feel understood, you generally push back. I certainly do. If I don't feel understood, I don't know why they want me to do something. I feel like I'm doing it for them, but not for me. On the flip side, if I do feel understood, then I feel like I can really contribute and work on something. And it's not just making them feel understood about anything. It's making them feel understood about things that they care about their motivations and their passions. And when you make someone feel understood and they share with you why they do the things they do, their motivations and their passions, by passion, I mean things they care about, strong motivations. When they connect about things like that, first of all, you develop empathy. So empathy and compassion, I've only heard leaders say that these are valuable skills to have. These are important things. So the meaningful connection exercise, I'm not going to go into it in depth or at all right now. I'll try to do it in a future seminar, but it's a little harder to do even in seminars. But it develops empathy. It also, when someone shares with you why they do what they do, it's like they're telling you, this is how I want you to lead me. If you lead me this way, I will be glad that you led me this way. I will come back to you for more. I want you to lead me more. And that enables you to inspire. So the next exercise after the making people feel understood exercise is how to inspire them, how to make them feel like I'm doing this for my own reasons and I want to work on this project. And maybe you giving them the task, but they will want to do the task and they'll like it. They'll thank you for doing it. And that feeling of inspiration, that may last a little while, but generally projects last a lot longer than just the time that the inspiration lasts. So the next step is how to support the person, how to sit down with them and figure out what they need in order to be able to provide the support that they need. And anyone in a professional or personal relationship, I'm sure you know the difference between working on a project or working with someone when they support you versus when you don't feel support from them. And so the next thing after making someone feel inspired is to be able to support them. And then for the long term, even the support only lasts so long. And then it's to be able to transition to management. Management is a little more cut and dried, I think, than leadership. And so that's where the leadership course leads to, is to be able to get to this stage where you manage people for the long term. So, okay, so there's a little bit about the course. I want to give you this. This is a word for word feedback that I got from someone who came to my seminar who only did meaningful connection and how to make people feel understood. And she said, Josh, you may be interested to know, oh, by the way, this is someone with an MBA from Columbia, and I'm not going to tell you where she works, but it's a very prominent place. And the people that she works with are people that you read about in the paper. So very important stuff. And she certainly had her share of business success before coming to my seminar. And she said, Josh, you may be interested to know that I took out an associate who will be working on my team and use your technique. She teared up saying no one ever asked her these questions. And she is so grateful that I'm taking an approach to her work based on what she likes and wants to do. It also revealed some of her deep fears and was quite profound. So she continued, invaluable, thank you. But that wasn't just it. There was more to it than that. She said, I felt terrific afterward in that she felt great and also that I felt I could get more out of her. She's also a friend, so I was conscious that she now reports to me, but that was entirely neutralized in this conversation. Great stuff. That's what happens when you lead people with empathy and compassion, and you know how to do these things, not just what to do, but how to do it. It's to lead people so that they will thank you. So that at the end of the project, when faced with having to work with someone else, they're going to want to come back to you. They're going to want you to lead them again. This leadership is based on your passions, what motivates you deeply, and theirs. And it comes from enabling people to share their vulnerabilities with teams, even in a professional environment. And if you're inspired by, I'm sure everyone here has been inspired at some point by a manager, a professor, a coach, a parent, someone who's gotten you to feel like, wow, I really love this stuff. You feel like you're doing it for yourself. Yes, the other person might be telling you what homework to do or what project to work on, but when they connect you, when they're able to when they make you comfortable sharing what your passions are, what motivates you, you do it for your reasons. It creates intimacy. Now, still professional, although you can also do it in your personal life as well. And it gets you to the foundations of self-awareness through your relationships with other people. And it all comes from meaning, from connections, and from meaningful connections. That's the heart of this style of leadership. And I'm not sure if I mentioned that the meaningful connection comes about 3/4 of the way through this course. That's like all the stuff I said is the tip of the iceberg. So before the meaningful connection exercise, there are 4 units in this course. The first one is understanding yourself. Well, the 4 are understand yourself, lead yourself, understand others, and then lead others. So the part about understanding yourself is, first of all, it's the stuff that doesn't have you going out and doing stuff with the rest of the world. So it tends to be more safe. You can do these exercises in mindfulness, being aware of how you think and how you process thoughts and how you perceive things, and how your beliefs affect your mental models, how they affect how you perceive things. And that's to give you some self-awareness and awareness of how you work. And then leading yourself, which is about bringing out your authentic voice, to speak more openly and to realize your habits and start changing habits of yours, and to realize beliefs that are getting you to see the world in one way and seeing how to change these beliefs to bring about behaviors that are more productive. Understanding others generalizes that to be not just about you and how you operate, but how we all operate, the human emotional system and how it works, and to give you a model for working with that so that you're not just, managers work with giving people raises and bonuses and things like that. That's their motivations. It's external. Leaders often work with things that are less visible, things like mental models and symbols and things like that. And that's where understanding others comes into play. And then leading others is what I talked about. It starts with the meaningful connection exercise and then goes on to from compassion to empathy to inspiration to support and then to management. Now, every other leadership book and course that I'm aware of, they are always about principles, like the 48 laws of this, or the rules that you must follow, or a lot of stuff about the lives of different great leaders. Now, that stuff can be useful, but that's information and it's not experience. And anyone who's walked into a leadership context, you know that leadership leaders become great from experience. Imagine learning piano by trying to read only about Bach and learning musical theory. It's not the same as doing stuff. Or trying to learn to act by reading about Brad Pitt. Great actor, great someone to emulate from, but that's not where you start. So all these fields that I keep alluding to, like acting and singing and playing musical instruments, these are active, social, expressive, emotional, performance-based. This is not economics or accounting, which don't have this expressive, performance-based component. I mean, they're not completely absent those things, but only leadership, as far as I know, is the only field I can think of that has these properties of being active, social, expressive, emotional, and performance-based, where we try to teach it by theory in acting and singing and all in sports, all of these things where people get great emotional awareness and expressiveness and performance skills. It never starts with it starts with putting your hands on the keyboard, putting your hands on the basketball, playing, doing the things. So my course gives you exercises to face and overcome social and emotional challenges. And those are the big things in leadership that differentiate between just knowing what to do and how to do it. If you try to implement leadership principles without practice, I'm sure we've all sat there reading books on leadership or reading histories of great leaders and thinking, oh, wow, this is great. Now that I know this, I can't wait. Now that I watch this TED Talk, I know what to do. When I go into some situation, I'll do that. And if you've ever walked into a negotiation or conflict that needed resolving and you just knew the principles but had no experience, I don't know about you, but I get overwhelmed with intense emotion and my tongue gets tied. I don't know what to do, just like I did with that author. So books, case study, even class discussions can't give that experience. Only doing those things gives that experience. And I should say that experience also teaches you the theory. So you'll learn the principles by doing them if the experience is based in theory. And so all these exercises, I didn't just come up with any old exercises. I honed them over years and over a decade of putting them together. So the course gives everyone a unique personal experience, because when you do meaningful connection or any of these other exercises with someone, that's what someone in your life, someone that you care about, working on a project that you care about. You work on what you care about with people you care about, and that makes your experience unique to you and meaningful to you and effective for you. And I say, what about regular life? I can learn leadership just through regular life. All the greats did. Well, regular life throws random stuff at you in random orders. Sometimes you get something that's really complicated right off the bat. I think that's why a lot of people, they get faced with some challenge that was way beyond their skills early on, and they think, oh, wow, leadership is too much. I can't handle that. And so that they give up on leadership. It also doesn't necessarily come in an optimal order for you to learn from. So it doesn't, the school of hard knocks doesn't necessarily teach you optimally, even if it doesn't overwhelm you. I think that's why many taste leadership and instead accept complacency and just give up. And they end up believing that you have to be born with it. But I can tell you, Branson wasn't born with it. No baby is born leading. Everybody has to learn it somehow. Oh, so this example of when I played sports in college and I was captain of my team for a little while. And I remember at the end of these tournaments, it's like the end of a Saturday, we'd played all day and we'd be dirty and hungry and tired. We wanted to go to sleep and eat and shower. And we'd all sit there next to the van on the fields and slowly changing out of our cleats, putting on our clean clothes. And I used to think, guys, if we got in the van, we could do this back at the hotel. We could shower and get eating fast, eat sooner and get to sleep sooner, instead of sitting here on the field. Guys, let's all get in the van and let's go. And they never would. And one time, one of my friends on the team I say, guys, why don't we get in the van? It makes more sense to do that. I was trying to convince them. Or after I'd convinced them, I was trying, why wasn't the convincing working? And this guy looks up to me and says, Josh, I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you, but the way you're saying it, I just don't want to do it. It makes me not want to do it. And that's what happens when you don't have meaningful connections, when you don't connect with people, that you often don't get, you're trying to logic things out, and it doesn't really work that well. So my course structure is the same structure that you get when you learn to play a musical instrument, when you learn to play sports. It's scales. First, do the simple stuff that's very mechanical. It feels very mechanical at the beginning. You might think, but this isn't expressive. I'm just following a script. And yet everyone who played Carnegie Hall also played a lot of scales. After you do the scales, you get to simple pieces. Things that are still just so simple that they're like the littlest bit of music. And then you work to more simple pieces, to more pieces, and eventually get to complex pieces. And when you get to very complex pieces, that's when you start being able to express yourself. And my course does that. It starts with very simple exercises. The early ones, I give them to the class and they're like, this is really why this doesn't seem like much. And at the end, I always ask them, should I take that out next year? Because you weren't really, you didn't think not much of it at the beginning. And they say, no, keep that in. So that structure is the same as other active, social, expressive, emotional, performance-based fields. And if you do them, if you do the exercises, you'll be able to express yourself as a leader, like a Carnegie Hall musician expresses themselves as a musician. You'll be able to express what you're passionate about. You'll be able to bring out your passions and get people working on their passions. So now I'm going to give some student feedback. These are, I don't know if I'll get through all of them, but here's some comments on people who took my courses. They said, this is the most influential yet relaxing class that I've ever taken in my life. I really loved, enjoyed it, and constantly amazed by how much I learned more and more over the course of practicing Joshua's exercises. This is a mutual experiential seminar for both students and professor to explore the meaning of leadership. This is a really great class that I will recommend to my friends. So you can see this is not the sort of thing where it's just learning information. It's a lot more than that. Oh, so now I want to talk in more detail about this course. Maybe some people listening are interested in taking this course. So it's the same exercises in the same order using the exact same software as my students at NYU. And I'll give you an idea of the price that the NYU students are going to pay. Because if you want to register for this course, actually, if you just scroll down on the screen, it should be that in one of the tabs, you should be able to sign up. But here it is. At NYU, I teach my class. It's a 4-point class. And for the full class, it's $6,000 to take exactly the same course. Now, they do get this classroom experience. I just went on the web yesterday to see this. I can't believe how much school is these days. Anyway, that's another point. So they get the classroom experience in person, working with me. So that is something more that they get. But the exercises and reflections are where you learn. I should say this, after you do the exercises, to get to the next exercise, you have to write up your reflections. And I always say that exercises are where you learn. You learn by doing. But the reflection, that's where you internalize what you learned. Okay, so, and you use the same form so that when you post your reflection, you then get to read the reflections of everybody else, and everybody gets to use yours. So there's this accountability, but also a sense of community. And NYU doesn't give a money-back guarantee, which I do. I don't know if any university that gives a money-back guarantee. That's a point of another talk. But I should also say that no one has ever exercised that option. Between my coaching clients, between people who have taken my course, everybody has always loved it. And if anything, gone on for more. I will tell you that if you are interested in taking this course, doing these exercises, you must be self-motivated. If you are not self-motivated, that's one thing that the NYU students get, is that they have a grade attached to this, and if they get a low grade, they have to deal with that. But someone who does this course online, there's nothing pushing you. And so if you're not self-motivated, I mean, you can pay for the course, but you won't do the exercises. So you have to be self-motivated to do it. But if you are self-motivated, these exercises, some of them you can finish in 5 minutes, but even the 5-minute ones, if you choose to work on them, you can keep doing them for the rest of your life. Like meaningful connection. You can do meaningful connection in 5 minutes with someone and have a delightful conversation. Then you can keep that conversation going for hours, like I did with Frances Hesselbein. And you can keep doing the practice of it for the rest of your life, which I'm also doing. But if you don't do the exercises, it's really worthless, and I wouldn't waste your time doing it. And also I should point out that this forum where people post their reflections, students read each other's stuff and they start interacting with each other. And a couple of them have already started meeting offline, which I guess means online. I mean, they started emailing each other independent of the course. And so business is happening in this course. If you take the course, you will be able to answer leadership questions as well as I can. Well, you will have to keep practicing and practicing and practicing. It's not just right away. You have to keep practicing, but you will have all the exercises that if you keep doing these exercises, you will be able to answer leadership questions as well as I can after you practice it as much. It's only a matter of practice. Only a matter of practice is a pretty big deal. You'll have direction and focus and drive. So the introductory price is $498. So that's less than, it's a 92% discount compared to the exact same thing that NYU students are doing for the exact same thing. And it's actually a bigger discount because right now, since it's just getting started, I'm responding a lot to people in the forum. And that's my involvement, my direct involvement, and that's later going to be a premium. So right now, because there aren't many people doing it, then I get the chance to interact with people more directly. And that would normally cost more than that. So why the discount? You know, I've started several companies and I've always started the same way. I always start with low prices and raise them until I feel like I find the market price. So that's just been a strategy that's worked for me. So I'm starting low and raising it over time. I'm not sure when I'm going to raise it from where it is now. A lot of times on webinars, people are like, here's this discount. Well, that's the discount right now. It'll go up pretty soon, but I'm not sure exactly when. So at 21 exercises, if you do one per week, that's about 5 months this course would take. Now, some people can do it faster. Some people do it slower. It's up to you that when you write reflection, that advances you to the next exercise. So everyone can do it at their own pace. But that works out to less than $100 per month, which I think seems like a pretty good deal. So if you want to sign up, I'm not sure how many people listening are like, oh, I really want to do that. I've made this course to be exactly what I would want, to the point where I might have, if I had had this course available to me, I might have done it instead of business school and saved myself roughly the entire cost of business school. Anyway, to sign up, click the offer tab below, and there should be a link to the sign up page. And, you know, I just think of what you can do when you can create whom you know, when you don't have to worry about what you know, when you don't have to know who you know, but you can create the relationships to make whom you know. When you can meaningfully connect with people that you can't dream of meeting right now. Think of what doors that opens. What's your equivalent of being able to get invited to Victoria's Secret runway shows like my student did? She was ecstatic about that. of meeting Presidential Medal of Freedom honorees and doing business with them and having them invite you to their office for coffee, or being able to get an entire class invited to the global headquarters of the CEO of a huge 250,000 person operation like Deloitte, or outselling professional salespeople without even having taken a sales course. This is kind of, I would say, pretty interesting stuff. I wish I had it earlier. I put to you, you can expect better relationships with family, friends, partners, husbands, wives, interviewers, kids, and better by whatever, I don't know what better means to you, but you know what better means to you because it's meaningful to you. You know, the other day I was teaching in class and I was teaching my students, this at NYU, I was teaching them how to make a certain type of connection by email to people. And someone was asking me, well, how do you make a connection like to someone's, like how would you do something like, he asked some particular deal. And it occurred to me, I just emailed with someone who was a #1 best-selling author. And I thought, oh, you know, I had my screen put up on the projector. And so I said, oh, check this out. And so I took down I switched over to my email and I brought up an email that I just written that day to this #1 best-selling author. And I said, here's an example. And then I thought, oh yeah, I just worked with this Harvard professor that I was introducing myself to. So, and I showed that email. And that's the sort of thing that I could do because I've been able to make these meaningful connections, is I've been able to, how do I put it? Make these meaningful connections and then just make that a part of my life so that the people in my life are Presidential Medal of Freedom winners, Harvard professors and things like that. And it's just casual stuff that I'm able to, I'm not bragging. I'm just saying this is a statement of fact. It's like in class, I could just show these examples. And it was like that day, this guy was writing me, these people were writing me back and setting up appointments and things like that. So I get reviews like this. This class embodied the perfect balance between in-class work and real-world exercises. As a result of what I learned from this course, I've been able to have wonderful interview experiences. How many of you have wonderful interview experiences that you look forward to interviews? Like, that's going to be wonderful. That your preparation is to think of like, oh, what kind of passions am I going to draw out in this other person? Anyway, and network effortlessly. So many people put so much effort into networking. I have fun when I network. I used to think about that the majority of leading involved delegating tasks, but boy, was I wrong. I learned that most of what consists of being a leader was connecting with people, being able to tap into their innate abilities and get the job done in the best way possible. Listen to that, connecting with people and being able to tap into their innate abilities. Then you get people contributing fully. Oh, this is a long one. I realized that even as an intern, I was able to lead my own colleagues and supervisors. I was leading my colleagues and my supervisors. You know, when you see people as people first and positions on company hierarchies second, you can lead anyone. So without this course and the techniques and exercises you taught us, I don't think I would have been able to seize every leadership opportunity and successfully interact with my bosses and colleagues to the point where they actually offered me a job. Taking this course, doing these exercises, got this person a job. This is anonymous, by the way. I don't know exactly who the student was. I really want to thank you for all the knowledge I've gained from this course. It turned out to be one of my most useful and meaningful classes I've taken at NYU and challenged me to reconsider and redefine my understanding of true leadership. This is the sort of thing I wish I'd said about the courses that I took. Another, personally, identifying with Joshua's passion for leadership and seeing the great powers it has on creating growth and change, I believe very much that my participation in these exercises were infused with honest effort and great enthusiasm. I found increased meaning in the work that I do and have found myself more motivated to arrive and thrive within those spaces. I'm beyond grateful. Thank you. Have I put on too many of these? I think that this is one of the most important things that I learned from this class. I think that one of the most important things that I learned from this class was how to connect the exercises to my everyday life and to teach and inspire others to lead when they are struggling. My conversations with my roommate, helping her with the exercises, enhanced this class and created an application for my studies that I did not have in other classes. Also, even though she knows all the exercises already, she wants to take this class. I just wanted to say thank you for this class. I really enjoyed learning what you had to offer. I really believe that my dance team has benefited from the exercises I've incorporated from your class. People immediately, before, my class does not prepare you for some future application or some future life. My courses, you immediately start implementing them in your life in real time. These exercises, you start doing them and start applying them to your teams, to your life as it happens, not later. So it's not like start the course now and in 5 months you'll start seeing results. It's start the course now and get results right now. Another long one. The project, well, this is maybe too long. I'm a little over an hour. here's one. Throughout the whole experience, I was able to understand how people function in a group. This new way, I'm going to go to the bold part. This new way of managing my team really enabled me to help my team overcome problems that our team has been having in the past year. And I took great joy in seeing changes happen in the dynamic of our group. I look forward to using the strategies I've learned from this project in future projects and eventually doing these exercises naturally without having to think so much about doing them. So he or she, I don't know who this person is, just it's anonymous, but they're doing it already and they recognize it's just a matter of practice. One student's employer is a big national employer. It was one of my students, an undergrad, was at the top position that the company had for undergrads that they could offer without a college degree. The next position up, they needed a college degree for. And so they created a position to promote this guy. And he came back, he was like, Josh, I just got promoted because they wanted to keep me and they wanted to make sure I was here over the summer after the class ended. And so they made a new position. So, okay, that's enough of me talking about the course. And how to sign up if you're interested, click in the offer tab below and the link should get through. I guess I should go to the questions now. Yeah, I guess that was the end of it. Thank you for listening through. I hope that I can get these questions because I've had trouble with this software before. And usually I have two computers. Right now I only have one computer on my phone and I'm looking over here. But if people have questions, please feel free to post them. I'm kind of curious because other times my face has been on the screen and I'm only seeing my slides. Okay, so I'm seeing a question. What are some clues that people give that show how they like to be led? Well, when you do when you do how to make people feel understood, they will tell you what their passions are. And the most clear answer I can give is that they will tell you in plain language that, okay, for example, this is what I love to do. So you'll say to them, I can't do the whole exercise, but you will say to them things that make them feel comfortable. Like if someone works at a job, if you're interested in leadership, if you're interested in your career, in your profession, you care about what you do. You are probably, this is speaking to you, the attendees of this webinar. You care about what you do. It was hard to get there. You had to work to get there. You're not just doing the easiest thing you can to pay your rent and eat. So that means probably the people you work with, they probably also worked hard to get there. They had to put some effort to get there. That meant they sacrificed something else. They could have had more fun in life doing something else, or they could be doing something easier. So that means something is motivating them, and I guarantee it's not the money. Almost no one is in a job purely for the money. Whatever that other motivation is, they generally don't share it right off the bat. Most of us, when we shared stuff, when we were kids, we got laughed at. When we shared it with people we cared about and we broke up with them, it hurt. And so we often don't want to be hurt, and so we don't share these things. But when you say to someone, if I were working with a professor at a university, I'd say, look, I'm a professor. You're working at something you don't have to work. I mean, you work hard and you could be paid more doing other things. So what is it like? What's your passion behind what you're doing here? And it's a different exercise to get out what they'll share, but they'll say, I really love, I don't know what it'll be. It's different for every person, but someone might say, I love getting the feedback from students a year after I've taught them or 5 years after I've taught them, that getting that feedback that tells me that what I taught them changed their life and it made their life better. And I live for that. I guarantee whatever field you're in, no matter whom you talk to, everyone has something like that. And when they share it, they tell you right in plain language, I do it for this. To inspire someone, you then connect that passion to the task that you want done. And they will work like crazy because they're doing it for themselves, not for you. And so really, to answer the question, the signs that they give you are they will tell you in plain language if you make it comfortable for them to share and you know what to listen for. I hope that answers that question. So I'll give a little more time to if anyone else has other questions. It's a great question, by the way. Thank you. By the way, is my face on the screen? Because I tried to not share the face, but I see that my little light is on that's showing that that my camera's on. I shudder to think that I've been doing this whole thing with my face being shown. Let's see, not seeing any of the questions. Yes, I do understand you discover what the engine is in the fuel. Yes. Thanks, Todd, for letting me know. Yeah, the engine, I'm glad you said that, Julia, that you discover the engine and the fuel. And wait, Todd just wrote empty profile image. Is it not showing the slides? I'm going to be really embarrassed if I just went through this whole thing with all these slides. Oh, the slides are small. Oh, I hope you guys could read them. Sorry it was split like that. Sorry about that. Sometimes I think of what motivates people. Sometimes the exterior stuff that people motivate with, when you motivate people through things like external things, or get people to use their willpower, it's kind of like a starter engine, the starter motor in a car. That the starter motor can move the car, but it's not really how you drive a car. A car really runs through a motor, and the emotional system is more like the motor, more like the engine. And so a lot of what I consider a main part of leadership, and a lot of what comes in this course, is to be able to, sometimes you need a little bit of starter engine, but get the people working based on their emotions, on their passions, things that they really care about. And when you get that, then they run smoothly. And I think of the support stage as kind of like when you, it's kind of like providing a top up on the gas or fixing the engine every now and then. People in their cars, they want to drive. But you got to provide support sometimes, because sometimes there's conflicts or there's run out of resources, and you as the leader have to provide those things. But I really like the analogy that you wrote, Julia. All right, so any other questions? If not, then I'll wrap up. I just want to reiterate that my problem is that I do not feel passionate about anything. If I ask someone about their passion and they ask me the same question, what do I say? Well, the first thing I would say is that when you ask this, in general, I'm trying to think, in every case that I can think of, I can't think of a counterexample. This conversation goes for a while without them asking me back what my passion is. And in fact, when they start talking about their passion, they generally want to keep talking about their passion. And so they're more than happy to keep talking about their passion. So I don't recall being asked back what my passion was. I do feel compelled on my side to start sharing things. So if I get them talking about their passion, and so they're talking about, if their passion is food, and they start talking about how they love to bring people together and try all these samples of different cuisines and things like that, they talk. And generally they prefer to keep talking about that. Then I might say, well, I like food for these other reasons or something like that. But I haven't had people ask me back. Now, that's in the moment. If they ask you, you could just say, I don't really have any passions, and just leave it at that. And then, you can move on to other topics at that point, but you've already meaningfully connected. The big picture, though, is that people who take my course, when they do these exercises, the passions start to emerge, even people who felt like their passions were dormant or non-existent. Now, I'm not saying it will work for everybody, but overwhelmingly, like that student who said I wasn't able, the one who got the internship and got to go to the Victoria's Secret show. At the beginning, she said, I don't know how to do anything. I don't feel capable to do these things. I didn't come to a class to do these things. I came to learn about these things. And when you go step by step, things start emerging that might not have emerged before. I know I certainly would have said that myself earlier. Maybe physics was a passion of mine. Some sports were a passion of mine. But more and more passions have emerged, not because I have more passions now than I used to, but because by making others feel comfortable sharing their vulnerabilities, I start realizing that I have vulnerabilities as well. And as I see them sharing them more comfortably, I start sharing mine more comfortably. I had a client who I had him do meaningful connection with people at his office because he really didn't like his work environment. He said, Josh, everyone there, they're really boring. They have no lives. They're losers. Anyone who works at my place is a loser. He didn't say it quite like that, but he was saying it pretty like that. And I said, you work there? He goes, yeah, I'm different. I said, do meaningful connection with them. Try it out and see what happens. He said, Josh, I've had beers with everyone. I know what they're like. I've talked to them outside of work. A week later when we talked, he had done meaningful connection. He was like, Josh, these people are amazing. They all do all sorts of crazy things. Like one of them is building, I think he said he was like building a clubhouse for his kid. And another one was like taking dance lessons with his wife. I don't know, they had different projects. Going out and having beers with people is not the same thing as allowing them, making them feel comfortable exposing their vulnerabilities. When you don't expose them, you don't get the things like that. When you do, it becomes a two-way street. I can't guarantee for everyone that will happen, but I think it my hunch is that the more that other people open up with you, the more that you feel comfortable opening up with them. So the first bunch of times it may not happen, but over time, I predict that you'll start being able to share more and more things. So I hope that answered the question. But I mean, the short answer to what do I say is, I don't really know any passions, and you can just be honest and just say that. They might try to coax them out of you, I'm not sure, but that's something you can do. So again, if I don't see any more questions, then this is, like I say, this course that I created is the course that I would have loved myself if I could go back earlier. And it takes over a decade of my experience of what got me to where I could have the meaningful connections that I have, and to put them into the most concise and simplest way of learning. And the people who are doing it are having great experiences, as you saw from the testimonials and the reports back. So I hope that a couple of you will sign up, and I hope to see you there. If not, I hope that Meaningful Connection is nonetheless very useful for you. And I hope that if you use it and it works for you, that you email me back at some point and tell me how it works. If it doesn't work for you, email me back and tell me it didn't work, and maybe I can help troubleshoot for you. Otherwise, thank you very much, and I look forward to it in my next webinar.